Good evening, Graham.
Hello, Charles.
Good evening, Anthony. Welcome Sunday night, and it's into September, and it's that stretch of the year which seems to me to accelerate away into winter time before you know it. But there are
It
things.
is gig season, though. I always
Yes,
prefer gigs in autumn and winter than the summer. Summer's for
yes,
outdoor festivals, but
mhm,
autumn winter's for indoor gigs, which I prefer anyway.
absolutely. I mean, we're looking at the.
Quick interruption, Charles.
Yeah,
Charles,
go
I've got
on.
something very trivial, but
Yes,
something you may like.
that I don't know what you're saying about me that I should like trivia. Go on.
Well, it pertains to Edinburgh Film House, where we were
Oh
recently
yes,
for the Edinburgh
yeah,
National Film Festival, and it
yeah.
turns out that the programming director at Edinburgh Film House, Rod
Hmm.
White, when he was asked to say his two highlights from the last year, he said, "My first highlight is rescuing Edinburgh Film House and
Good.
making sure it reopened." He says, "My second highlight was Leeds getting promoted to the Premier League."
I'm delighted to hear that.
So the
I feel
programming
it.
director of Edinburgh Film House is a Leeds United fan.
I'm chuffed and delighted. I also, I've got to be honest, I think his priorities are the correct way around as well. I've got no objection to that whatsoever. Um, so well done him, and well done in particular, actually, on the fact that absolutely the return of Edinburgh Film House was a joy. We're going to, I suppose, we're looking at the dying embers of summer, and we're also going to come on to one of the first autumn highlights, which we'll come on to later. But the first one is that you went to, I think, the last day of Leeds Festival, Graham. Just a reminder, that's held at Bramham Park, and three-day festival, um, which largely now is associated with young people celebrating their exam results and having a good time, and maybe that's reflected in what you would describe as the contemporary acts, in the choice of those acts. Is that a good idea for Leeds Festival? Whereas Glastonbury seems to be to still play quite strongly to heritage as well as to new.
Well, this year Leeds Festival and Reading Leeds Festival, because they're both tied together,
Yeah.
it had the fewest name guitar bands it's ever had. It felt like if it had any fewer guitar bands, it would have had none. And it also meant it sort of felt like it left behind its moorings because it evolved in the mid to late 90s and was built heavily. Although it always had elements of dance and DJs and rap and
Mm.
acoustic, it was always mainly guitar bands. And this
More to
this
that,
this year's felt
more than
like,
that, Graham. More than that, Graham.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
associated strongly with heavy metal as well. Cousin Ben
Well, it
Bolton
always had a hard rock
would go
day,
to
a
Leeds
hard
Festival for
rock or a
hard
metal
rock,
day,
wouldn't he?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of fallen by the wayside a bit as well.
Mm.
But anyway, I almost didn't go because I always say this. I first said this in 2003 that this is the worst lineup they've ever had. But this one felt like, what? Why am I going? But curiosity got the better of me, so I went along. And Rockstar Energy presents Reading Leeds Festival. Well, it attracted altogether over the weekend the two twin festivals, 200,000 people. So that sounds like a success.
Yeah,
But the headliners, I mean, here's the headliners: Chapel Roan,
yeah,
Travis Scott, Bring
yeah,
Me the Horizon,
yeah.
Hosier. I mean, I've scarcely heard of them whatsoever. And even though I hadn't heard of them, I thought none of these, this won't be the sort of music I like. But I
Mm.
thought, well, I'll go anyway. And the festival director, Melvin Ben, who I've met a few times, mainly in
Yeah,
the past when Leeds Festival was more about guitar bands, I used to take it really seriously.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
he said that this was a seismic year in the evolution of Reading Leeds, which maybe it was. But then he went on about how Chapel Roan's headlining slot had been a mind blowing show. Well, Chapel Roan is an American female dance pop act who sounds
Yeah,
a bit like Lena Lovitch, the late
yeah.
1970s,
You should
less
indeed.
interesting. He also said the most moving headline set he's ever heard was by Hosier. Now, Hosier is an Irish singer songwriter, sort of soul blues, who basically
Mm.
sounds like a more upbeat, laid back Black Keys. And he said that was the most moving thing he'd ever heard. So it
Graham, are
does
you
make me
suggesting you
think,
don't believe what Melvin's saying?
I don't know, maybe Melvin is much more up to date with what young people like musically than I am. Could be as simple as that. Not everybody rejects, dance pop and, wiffly waffly singer songwriters. A lot of people like them. So maybe not Tony Benn. That'd be quite interesting. Tony Benn ran Leeds Festival, but Melvin Benn just be cooler than me. Simple
Everyone
as that.
having lots of cups of tea and polo mints. That's Tony Benn's idea of a good festival.
That'd be hilarious, yeah.
Ooh.
But I actually wrote a review for the Harrogate Advertiser, which I might actually read a bit of it if you don't mind.
Yeah, so in terms of who you did see, Graham, I mean, that's obviously, you're going to reflect on that in what you're going to read. Did you see any of those headline acts? Because I think they weren't they, from who you were reading out, were they earlier in the week headline festival acts rather than Sunday? Or was one of them Sunday?
No, I didn't actually see the headline acts because I just knew it was going to be bad. I did see Royal Otis from Australia, sort of like a guitar pop duo augmented by field musicians who are very much like MGMT, like you couldn't work out. It's just a real band, there's the duo with backing as well. And they at times sound like Phoenix, and they were really good at sound like Phoenix. So Royal Otis were pretty damn good. I was very impressed. But this is what I wrote for the Harrogate Advertiser.
Yeah.
Sometimes the hardest part of Leeds Festival is leaving it. And that's not just about saying farewell to the feast of live music on 5 stages over 3 days in the real splendour of Bramham Park. No, I mean navigating the right exit, the right bus, the queues and the waiting, then finally beginning your real journey off-site, back home to wherever you came from. In bad weather, it's a scenario akin to grabbing the last helicopter during the fall of Saigon. and I go on like that. And I talk about how life has changed at Leeds Festival. And I say that, it's looking to reach a younger generation makes sense, certainly in the long run. Well, on paper at least, though I do worry. But the vintage Reading and Leeds Festival posters dating from years gone by, pinned on the festival site's giant fences, tell a different story. A story of Sonic Youth and Oasis, Beck and the Foo Fighters, Stereolab and Pulp, Metallica and the Chemical Brothers.
And Nirvana, Graham.
Yeah. No, that was Reading Festival. Leeds Festival didn't arrive until 1999.
But they did play Reading Festival. The headline.
That's true. And I say that sort of mainly, but not solely, guitar-oriented lineup of the 90s and noughties started to fade in the 2010s, in part because of changes in the real world of music. The days when it's possible to bump into a member of Pavement or Ice-T in a casual fashion, as I once did, are over too. Despite a smattering of T-shirts in the milling crowd sporting the sort of names of different bands which still matter to Mojo magazine and BBC Six Music, the new kings and queens of the Leeds Festival bill hail from the modern worlds of pop, dance and rap, sometimes mixing all three at the same time. And I'll go on to praise Royal Otis and quite good band from London, Good Neighbours, sort of like glossy guitar, pop. But I say that for the majority of the youthful crowd, amid the blanched, dusty atmosphere of the sun-kissed Leeds Festival, such questions were probably way beyond the point. For 3 days, Bramham Park was a giant party with a musical background. But if this year's Leeds Festival flirted with turning into Love Island, well, who would want to jump on the boat and leave? So that's what I wrote in the Harrogate Advertiser.
We've often speculated, Graham, about the death of guitar bands, but the story of this year, whether we like it or not, the story of this year has been Oasis. That is a guitar band.
That's vintage. That's history.
I know it's vintage, Graham.
Not current.
So it's just I'm going to that question because we've said that guitar music is under threat. We've regularly said that guitar music is under threat, and it's past generations that are keeping it alive. Are the festival circuit actually going to take the view that we've got to move on, got to move with the times? Guitar bands are very much yesterday. There's a heritage circuit that is fine. You could even call Oasis a heritage act if you like, given that they completely ignored music. Well, I think one song from post to the year 2000. So they're playing to heritage, and they're playing to an audience that probably like you and me has less interest in the kind of music that's on at Leeds. But if you say that 200,000 between the two festival sites have been, the festival is doing something right, even if it's not necessarily the music that you and I...
See, I think this is a conscious choice because last year,
I'm sure it
Leeds
is.
and Reading had bands like Fontaine's DC, Wet Leg, and quite a few other guitar bands. And those bands are popular, but those bands are popular for a much smaller percentage of the young audience than dance pop and electro pop and singer-songwriters. Those are bigger. So this year, they obviously decided, okay, we're just not going to bother trying to book bands like Fontaine's DC. We're going to book the acts that the majority of young people under 25, especially teenagers, actually like. And I think that's a good policy right now. But are these the sort of acts that any of the youngsters will want to see in 10 years' time? Will they keep on coming back? Aren't these acts just there as a background?
I think there'll be a churn, Graham, and I think the churn will get quicker. It'll be a festival for younger and younger people who are going for the same reason that they've gone for in recent years, which is to have a good time. Oh, and there's a bit of music going on as well.
I think that is the case, Charles, but in the proper long run, as in like 15 years or 20 years, that could turn out to actually backfire over that length of time.
Would you still go in 15 years' time?
What, you mean push my Zimmer frame? I mean,
that's the one.
You know, I must have been in the 0.005 oldest people.
Yeah, did you feel old there, Graham? Did you feel old?
Yeah, a bit, yeah. Mainly because I think I've never felt old before, not because I was younger, because I still genuinely liked a lot of the acts in the bill. But this time round, I thought, I'm really here out of curiosity because there's very few people here playing today that I'm going to enjoy.
So how are you going to judge? How are you going to judge going next year? How are you going to judge it?
Well, it depends what the lineup is. I mean, if it's the same lineup as this year, it's going to be quite tough for me to go.
Yeah, but I would point out that Deershed Festival is a very, very different animal from Leeds, and I think plays to what makes it a very good festival year after year. It's found its market, and I'm going to suggest that the Leeds Festival, as it is now, is finding its new market that may not be for you, Graham, but Deershed actually will still tap into all age groups, including family audiences, and there's a place for all sorts of different festivals there.
No, I agree. I want Leeds Festival to prosper and to survive and thrive and go forward. So I can understand that. I'm not saying please create a Leeds Festival purely for my taste. That would probably go wrong.
So anyway, we'll see what happens with Leeds Festival, Graham. I suspect that it will continue to be for a younger audiences, and you're going to feel more and more out of place each year. But sometimes I like to feel out of place in something. I think it's quite reassuring. So I've got no problems with that sometimes. And I'm not talking about going to festivals, because I've given up on festivals a long time ago because I just feel out of place at them. But and I don't really see the point in doing that in my case. But I think it's actually quite admirable that you still want to take the chance and see how you fit in with them. And probably I'm the one who's rather gutless about having given up on them.
Yeah, well, I've been to a million gigs. I deserve to be there. I'm not embarrassed to be there.
No, it's interesting because I don't have that qualm about being at any gig at all.
Yeah.
So I don't feel that about gigs. Maybe it's the warmth and protection and the darkness of a gig that I like more than a festival field. I mean, I associate fields with cows. I've grown up in a farming community. I've grown up amongst cattle, and that's for me is what fields for.
If you go to Deershed, then you feel more at home.
Absolutely. Now, Graham, as we're talking about summer coming to an end, one of the great songs of summer, it's even got the word summer in its title, is Don Henley's 1980s song, Boys of Summer. And I love that song, you love that song. And just a reminder that, of course, Don Henley from the Eagles. But it's arguable that this is actually perhaps the most significant song that he wrote. And it's kind of standalone. But for you, therefore, you've seen what you call unexpected depths in it. I mean, I don't think it's just a celebration of summer. I think it's more than that as a song. And you're going to explain why. Yeah,
well, I was a member of the Eagles, who are not my favourite band. I mean, obviously, Hotel California track's brilliant. They wrote some good songs, but it's not my thing, really. And The Boys of Summer in itself is an aberration for Don Henley, because it's off his second solo album, Building the Perfect Beast, which came out in 1984. And it isn't the sort of song that he normally does, and it hasn't got the sort of sound that he normally did either. But he didn't totally write it. It was like the music was mainly written by Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers,
Oh
and
yeah.
he changed it a bit and then wrote the lyrics. And it's the only track on that album from 1984 that sounds like it does. The rest is all your usual sort of 1980s middle of the road
Yeah.
American blues rock pop.
Mm.
So I shouldn't really like it because it's got that typical 80s gated drum sound and icy synths and sparing guitar a la Police's big hits early in the decade. And it hit number 12 in the UK, number 5 in the USA. And it's just a pop hit, really. But it isn't. It's way, way, way better than that. It's just, it's the way it's done. And the lyrics are Spartan and sparse.
Mm.
The whole thing's set on a beach and set on the road, isolated places. And it's about his breakup with a girl. And it should just be like a surface level, romantic song. But it's accidentally very deep. The sound is perfect. It's brilliantly arranged, brilliantly played. It's sort of sparse and cold and full of unresolved tension. And although there's drama there, it's always restrained. And it's definitely not R&B or rock or country. It's something of its own. And it's full of emotion that's never expressed. So the verses are dry and factual. And then in the chorus, Don Henley's voice goes up high.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only hint of the depth of emotion in the whole song, because it's all about him telling himself that looking back to the past is completely pointless. So he's not going to give in to that feeling. And yet he keeps on looking back to the past, but he doesn't let himself go. So he's in this unresolved space where he knows this makes no sense to forever look back, but he can't help looking back. So the song ends up being accidentally really existential and really being about time and change, which are very deep subjects for a guy who's in the Eagles.
When people listen to it without listening as you have to the depths of lyric, it's a great summertime pop song, but that's only half the song.
Mm-hmm.
But that's
that's
the half that gets the radio play on Virgin Legends or whatever, or any station that celebrates music of the 80s. It's a vibe that's given off by the song, not by the lyrics, that draws people, I think, to that song. And yet, I think as one gets older and you take greater interest in the lyrics, it has a different resonance that you've highlighted, and it is more mournful for that. It isn't just a song that feels, I can feel the summer heat coming through this song. I can feel the roof coming off the car to this song. It's a lot more to it than that.
Well, if you think about the lyrics to Hotel California, the title track of their multi-million selling album, The Eagles, that is, written by Don Henley, it is for an American drummer in a big hit band, he's an intelligent bloke. And the lyrics are also about the realizing that the 60s have gone. And of course, the Eagles were the product of the 60s, even if they didn't have fame till the 70s. So there's a bit where he actually references the Grateful Dead. Obviously, we're like the 60s, 70s band par excellence.
Yeah.
And he says, saw a deadhead sticker on a Cadillac. A voice inside said, "Don't look back. You can never look back." And yet, that's all he does in the song. All he does in the song is look back. And the video is exactly the same. The video does nothing but look back as well. And the video is an amazing work of art. It's in black and white, and it sort of it crosses 1940s film noir with European art house cinema, with a expensive man's perfume advert in terms of the style, because it's directed by a French photographer, Jean-Baptiste Mondino, who also did videos at the time for David Bowie, Madonna, Bjork. And it's just a really clever, intelligent, but also very understated, restrained video, which totally suits the restrained, understated nature of the song. So the marriage of music, lyrics, and video from someone like Don Henley is quite preposterously brilliant. It's a ridiculously great piece of art.
It's one of the great songs of that era, isn't it?
Every time I hear The Boys of Summer, I love it every single time. Yeah. And I've heard it a million times. And normally you get bored when you've heard a song a million times, but it's just exquisite.
Perfect summary, and a good week to discuss it, because as summertime comes to the end, and we do look back, even though it says never look back. We instinctively look back. We're bound to. We're both in our 60s now. Of course, we look back, but also we look forward, Graham. And so I'm going to bring up. We're going to go on later to the anti-colonial art in Edinburgh, but just going to take us into a field that we don't often look at, which is television. We don't tend to look at that very often, but two familiar figures from stage.
That's because we're too busy going out, Charles.
Well, this is true, but there's been a lot of attention paid to the return of Mitchell and Webb to the format of sketch comedy. And now the background to this, it was Channel 4 invited them to return to doing this. And they themselves describe it as the trickiest genre of comedy. And I'm not going to argue with that, because I think that's absolutely true. So the reason that it's been brought back was counterintuitive commissioning is how Webb and Mitchell described it. And I can understand that. But, and actually, even before we're discussing this show, it's been the subject among cultural critics speculating on the viability of the revival of the sketch show. And, I mean, the history of the sketch show, which is what they grew up with, was the two Ronnies, Russ Abbott Show, Morecambe and Wise, French and Saunders, Alas, Smith and Jones, a bit of Fry and Laurie, all of which, of course, retain some popularity. Now, more recently, we've had The Fast Show, is perhaps the obvious example. There's also been Catherine Tate's show. And here comes Mitchell and Webb.
Surely the problem with the sketch show is that some of the subject material over the years dates and becomes almost offensive. So
that does
a shelf life.
I think it's fair to say that like a bag of fish and chips and whatever, it's here and gone. And they make that point that actually there's a spoof that they did earlier, but that it reflects this particular show, is that the nature of a sketch show is going to be hit, miss, hit, miss, 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 hit, miss, hit, miss, hit, miss. My problem straight away is that it was an awful lot more miss than hit this time round. And
really? Is it not funny?
No.
Oh, good grief, that's terrible.
Not very.
No.
I think
like Mitchell.
I'm going to sound like a real old prude to say that, it's desperately reaching for bad language seems to me always a bad sign.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just bored with it.
They're too intelligent for that. They're really, intelligent.
Only two sketches within it that I thought had any merit. One of which was sending up the fact there's been not just the Emily Maitlis interview with Prince Andrew, but there's subsequently been things about it and spin-offs about how it was made, etc. That was the one time I thought, yeah, okay, that's topical, because one of the things that you want in the sketch show is to reflect pop culture of the time. And I don't think it's doing enough of that. The other one was how you get treated now by airport staff when you're going through and you're having to take your shoes off and all these other things, and how incredibly rude and obviously how they seem to take great pleasure in being unpleasant. And I thought
have Mitchell and Webb done most of the writing for this series?
I think so, as I understand it, that they have.
So perhaps because they're older, they're just not as in touch with things that would create humour.
They both said they watch very little television, and I came across on it. I mean, the characteristics of Mitchell are that he's a pedant. He comes across deliberately as being rather staid and a bit irritated by life. Webb comes across as rather more angry about life. And there's still an element of that to it. But the fact is that other things that they've done in recent times, I mean, Ludwig was a wonderful series that Mitchell did recently, and also the Shakespeare, the Shakespearean piece that is done for the BBC as well. And I think yeah, absolutely. And I found this really deflating. What it seemed to me to confirm is that it is an incredibly difficult genre to do. It is. They make the point that with why sitcoms can work is that you become familiar with the characters and then you just see them being put through new situations, but you kind of know how they're going to react. So there's a repetition to it. Whereas the nature of sketch shows is that every 2.5 minutes it's got to be something new and fresh, and you tend not to return to it. Although actually
Robert Webb and Mitchell are such great actors. Like I saw Robert Webb on stage at Harrogate Theatre about 10 years ago, and it was some comic play. It was either P.G. Wodehouse or it was
Jeeves, and he was in Jeeves and Wooster. Graham.
Jeeves and Wooster, and I was about 5 rows back, and to see him acting up close, every facial expression was just right for the whole production.
Yeah.
Andy was very funny. He was fantastic.
I think that, to me, this is part of the disappointment. And actually, again, with Mitchell, of course, Would I Lie to You is wonderful on Would I Lie to You.
Against Lee Mack. Him and Lee
Against
Mack
Lee Mack.
sparring.
And it's
hilarious.
interesting that returning to being with Webb.
Yeah.
Well, Celestine has a theory she doesn't find Webb very funny. Well, I think Webb's done things that I have found him amusing in. But I think, yes, it's a friendship that carries over into the comedy that they do. But I think the desperate. I know I sound like a prude complaining about language, but I don't get the point of just using the C word several times over. I don't understand it. There's an Australian sketch about coarse Australian farmers, and it's just a series of F words one after another. And why? What is the point of this? What is that showing? It's boring.
Maybe Mitchell and Webb just haven't seen enough of each other for a long time, so they haven't got that natural chemistry anymore.
It felt very forced, whereas Would I Lie to You, the relationship between Lee Mack and David Mitchell works wonderfully well. They're in a groove of teasing each other, and maybe that's more like the familiarity of sitcom characters together.
I also think that when Mitchell and Webb used to be together a lot, Mitchell was always playing the underdog who lacked self-confidence.
Yeah.
And if you look at Mitchell and Would I Lie to You, he's full of self-confidence now. So I think he's a different person. I think Mitchell has changed from what he was 20 years ago.
I mean, Ludwig still plays to the surprises himself and surprises all those around him, that character and what he's able to achieve. But you're right. I mean, I think that, that there is a supreme confidence in how he performs on, and it's become more and more the case on Would I Lie to You, that characterization. I mean, it may seem, very judgmental to judge on one episode, but I didn't feel it played sufficiently to their strengths that we've seen in other things that they've done. And I'm not convinced. I am certainly convinced that sketch comedy is the most difficult comedy to do. I'm not convinced, therefore, that actually it was worth them even getting together to all this, to me, is proving is how incredibly difficult sketch comedy is. And
it's always hard. It's also very hard to come back and be as good as you were.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking that Cambridge Footlights, they came, if my recollection's right, so they were Cambridge Footlights in 1984. And do you remember at the time that the Footlights used to come to Harrogate every year? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
And I think that they came, along with Olivia Colman and Robert Thorogood, in 1984. I think they came to Harrogate as part of that around the time of going to Edinburgh and then coming to Harrogate on the tour. And it's just, I mean, comedy has its ups and downs. There is this thought that maybe sketch comedy goes in and out of favour, but it has been, as they put it, away a lot longer than even in the past it has. I'm not sure this is going to bring it back into favour. I think it was sketch comedy that was pretty sketchy.
Changing the subject entirely, but talking about coming back. Suede's new album, which came out on Friday, Antidepressants, the follow-up to the fantastic Autofiction, which was their biggest and best album for about 25 years. Antidepressants on 2 plays is about as good as Autofiction, which is very, very welcome and very cheering.
It's had very strong reviews, hasn't it? We might well look at that. I'm away next week. Forgive me, I'm away in Prague next week. So, but hopefully on the following Monday, I might have had a chance to listen to the full album, and I think we should look at that. In our remaining time, which is comparatively short, shall we look briefly at we went to lots of exhibitions while we were at the Edinburgh International Film Festival, but you were struck by the anti-colonial exhibition that we saw. Maybe have a little reflection on that.
Well, we went to the Talbot Rice Art Gallery at Edinburgh University, as we always do, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And they had an exhibition of films installed in several galleries on giant screens by an Egyptian artist who's internationally famous called Wael Shawky. And they were all about the history of Egypt from the point of view of being colonized by the West and all the struggles over the centuries, from the Crusades to the 19th century. And what made them really good, I thought, was 2 things. First of all, they looked beautiful with interesting music, and it was like watching a Philip Glass opera. Yeah, that's how well put together it was, with all the acting all these historical roles. Another interesting thing was that it went through all the facts about what Western countries did to Egypt in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And it's one thing imagining that the West didn't behave totally properly towards its colonies in the 19th and 20th century. It's another thing when you actually see the actual factual record of what British and French governments did to Egypt one step at a time by matter of detailed choice, interfering, making alliances with corrupt politicians in Egypt, undermining good politicians, conquering and ruling. When you actually see that in detail, it's much more impactful than just saying that imperialism was wrong, which is what all you usually hear.
It was stone cold detail that was so striking. There were two different films that we saw. One with actors, the other with puppets that were, I think, glass puppets from memory. They were extraordinary details. You could actually see the puppets close up. And these were not short films. One was, I think, as long as 2 hours. And obviously that's very rare to go to an exhibition and perhaps sit for a length of time like that. But they did reward sitting and peacefully reflecting. I say peaceful, that's in the sense of concentrating. But their power was very disturbing. There was something chilling in the detail that they gave. The quiet control of the way it was done was very persuasive. It was also extremely informative. And it was one of those exhibitions that it was, as I say, it's rare to have a filmic exhibition in that detail. It was thoroughly rewarding. I'm not sure how long that's running till, whether it's still there in Edinburgh at the moment for people to see. But they were images that have stayed with me since the festival. And we saw many a film while we were there, but this was an interesting, very different filmmaking technique for both of the pieces. And it's continued to resonate.
It's so good to look at that even if you weren't interested in history, it was good to look at. It was a very artistic creation. And the thing about history is that it's not just about finding the facts, it's how you present them. And it presented the facts in such an interesting way. It was like a revelation.
I felt that. I mean, it was subjects I didn't know in detail at all. And it had exactly that effect. So we've reflected on our Edinburgh Times. We look forward to going back there again next year. And Graham, have a good week ahead. I'm looking forward to going to Prague. I'm hoping this time that the Kafka Museum will be open, because last time, in perfect Kafka style, it was closed on the day we tried to go for cleaning or something ridiculous.
Charles, was it closed just to you? That may be the problem.
It could. I hate to think, Graham, that would be even more Kafkaesque if everyone else was able to get in and I couldn't.
Did you just arrive at the wrong door?
Maybe that's the case. But anyway, if I get to the Kafka Museum, I might even talk about that next week.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.